Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Chick Chat Collective. I'm Casey, your host, and today we have the amazing Jenna Brocious. She is a spiritual intuitive. She is a positive speaker, and she's going to share with us today really how she got started and what sort of was the jump for her to start diving into all of these things. And you guys, it's just going to be a really fun, great conversation. And I'm really excited for all of you to be here to listen to it. So without further ado, Jenna, thank you so much for being here. And would you please
Thank
just
you
let
for
our
having
audience,
me.
of course, would you mind doing a little introduction to our audience so they know who they're listening to?
Yeah, so my name is Jenna Brocious. I am a wife and a mother. I sell positive intention prayer cards, and I had a little bit of a wild childhood raised by a single mother. We had motorcycle gang members in our house. We have lots of fun, crazy stories that I can now look back at with great laughter. And the moment it was very painful and hard, but now having gone through the healing process, I can look at it and all laugh with great joy. But quite a journey to get there, and I'm excited to share that today.
Yes, I love that. And I mean, already I'm just like, okay, how do you get to where you're looking back at things like that and laughing? Because I had basically a single mother childhood too, and some kind of crazy stuff, not so fun stuff, and a lot of it I don't look back at with laughter. A lot of it I'm like, really? Like, come on, And so, yeah, if you would share with us, I mean, I totally want to hear the motorcycle gang story if you don't mind, but just like give us an overview of kind of how crazy it was. And then
Yeah.
sort of, what led you to a path that you're on now where you can look back at it with laughter. And, obviously you have definitely created an amazing life for yourself and your family. And so basically give us a little glimpse into that childhood, that crazy wild childhood.
Yeah, I mean, my mom was a single mom. I had two younger siblings that went to go live at their dad's houses. My dad was not in the picture. I actually didn't meet my dad till I was 36 years old. So it was her and I actually just recently saw my mom for the first time in 5 years. And I'm starting to do podcasts. I'm starting to talk about my childhood. And my mom's like actually kind of being held responsible for the first time because she's not really admitted to a lot of my childhood stuff. So it's been funny, but we had this great conversation. And at the end of the day, I looked at her and I was like, Mom, I feel bonded because we just like, we're on the wildest roller coaster for years. And we both look back at it now knowing we're safe and okay, that we can have that laughter and that joy. But I mean, it was really hard. My mom dated a motorcycle gang member. The cops were staked out across the street. So the wife and the kids would go through the front and we'd wave at the cops, and the guys would go through the back and hide their bikes. I mean, we were stepping over like ripped off panties and condoms, and like my mom was just like, step over it, it's fine, and just keep moving. And like I couldn't imagine now doing that to my son. Oh, don't look, just step over it. I'm like, why are
Right.
we putting ourselves in these situations to begin with?
Totally.
Like
Yeah.
if the cops are staked out across the street, probably not the safest situation for us to all be in. But in that time, in that moment, my mom was in her bubble of, this is what I want to do and this is what we're going to do. And so I just had to follow along with all of it. And I don't know how I made it out so well, other than to say by the grace of God, I had the strength to keep moving forward every day.
Yeah. Where in the country did you guys live? Like what state were
We
you
were in
in?
Washington State,
Oh, okay.
Washington.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
interesting. And it's like when we were kids, it was kind of like our parents just took us wherever. Where right, like now it's like, why wouldn't you just like get a babysitter and go to your motorcycle gang member's house, and like leave your kids safe at home? But it was kind of the same way. Like, and for my fiance too, like his dad would take him to the bar and, you know, have him like be all cute so that he could get free drinks. And it's like, could you think about like taking your kid to a bar now? Right. Like I don't even go to bars, but it's like it was such a different time back then, It's like were you kind of raised in the 80s and 90s? Like late 80s, 90s?
Yes,
Yeah,
100%.
us too. So it's just funny because I can picture like little you with your mom, doing that stuff. And um
Well, even in junior high, the motorcycle gang member used to take me to junior high every day. So I would get off his Harley, I would take off my chaps, my leather jacket, my helmet, and I would walk into school. And now I'm like, no wonder nobody picked on me because I had a guy, like a big guy dropping me off every morning.
totally, you were like a middle school badass, like showing up on the Harley and hopping off. Yeah, everyone was like, we're not messing with her. We're going to become her friend.
Oh my God. But it's so funny because I'm like such a girly girl that it's just like I look back again and like laugh, like, what were we doing? Like, what were we thinking? Like, what was going on?
I know. Oh my gosh. Well, I guess at what age were you kind of like, okay, this is not necessarily like the most healthy or the most structured or the most, whatever word you want to use, environment for a child? Like, when in your mind were you like, I'm probably not gonna go down the same path that my mom went down? And what then, basically, what led to where you are now? Kind of give us the unfolding of everything.
I knew at a very young age what was going on in my house was not okay and not something that I desired to do for myself as I got older. I had quite a few families throughout my lifetime that were really just like safe places. Their houses were safe places for me to go on the weekends just to kind of like feel a little bit more comfortable because I knew what was going on in my house was just a little, it wasn't healthy and I didn't want to be a part of it anyways. And then I had a high school boyfriend whose parents pretty much let me move in almost my senior year and freshman year of college. And so
Nice.
they had understood what was going on at home and they had one son. And so they were very sweet to me. But it was my freshman year of college, the first night of finals. My mom called me at like 2 a.m. to come bail her out of jail because she just beat the shit out of her ex-husband's girlfriend. And I was like, this is like a big deal for me to be going to college and I'm about to have my first final and you're thinking about yourself in this moment. You're not thinking about me. And
Yeah.
that was the minute that I was like, I got to get out of this state. I got to get out of this town. If I don't leave now, this is going to be the rest of my life. Like her and I are going to have this horrible, not healthy relationship of me picking up the pieces every time. And so at the age of 19, I had a girlfriend that went to college at ASU and she's like, come down. The boys are cute. There's sunshine and palm trees. And I was like, get me out of this town. So I literally packed everything I could and I worked all summer to save as much money as I could. And I moved down to Arizona and I worked 3 jobs for like the first couple years I lived here just to like survive paying rent and like barely feeding myself and car insurance and cell phone. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
I just grinded it out, but it was also all on me. There was nobody affecting me. There was nobody that was going to like change me. You know, it was whatever I made it, it was going to be.
Yeah.
And it was the most freeing moment in time in my life that I will do it all over again.
Yeah. That's amazing. Well, and it's like, it says something, right? Like, your mom didn't call like a friend or someone to bail her out. It's like she called her daughter, and it's like, you can't do that. Like, if you do end up in jail as a parent, do not call your child to bail you out. Like, I don't care if it's the night before finals or not. It's like, don't do that. Like, there needs to be someone else in your life that can bail you out in a situation like that. Do not put your kid in that position. And it's funny. I actually quit college halfway through my sophomore year. I'm from Virginia and moved to San Diego. Like, I worked that whole summer. I lived with a friend in her parents' basement, saved up money, moved from Virginia to San Diego, like found my roommate off Craigslist and
Mm-hmm.
worked 2 jobs, and because I was like, I just got to get out of here. I can't repeat this cycle. Like, I don't want to get pregnant when I'm 18 and I need to get out of here and like have a fresh start, you know?
Yes.
So
Yeah.
that's
And
amazing.
don't you like look back at that moment with just like, I have such appreciation for like taking that risk that I mean, it really did change my whole entire life. I met my husband in Arizona. I have some of my greatest friends that are family that, are here now. So
Yeah.
I feel
No, it
very lucky and
definitely,
blessed.
oh yeah, it definitely changed the trajectory of my life, like, for sure. It was just like, okay, you can be whoever, do whatever. This is a brand new fresh start, basically, and I did meet a lot of people. Some of the people in my life are from that point, like from that stage, and they're my best friends. I did meet my future ex-husband, or not my future, my ex-husband out there too. That was its own
Right.
crazy thing, and what's funny is now I'm engaged to my like college crush, basically, who I had met before
Oh,
I
how
quit
funny.
and moved out. But it's just funny how the world works. And I do think, just us having the courage, number one, right? It's kind of scary to leave your hometown at 19 years old and move states and do it by yourself. And right, you're just like, I'm gonna do this. Like, I know that I can. And I think it like gives you
Right.
that clean slate, you know?
Mhm. Yeah. I mean,
So
people ask me like, what would be the best thing you could do to get away from like a narcissist or somebody that's very controlling? And I say this with such grace, but I'm like, move away. Like, you just have to get yourself completely out of the situation. And the only way for me to have that clean cut from her was to move states away. And now it's a much better relationship, but I really had to make that huge jump to create my own healthy life.
yeah, that's amazing. Well, then what happened? Like, you get to Arizona and what happened?
So I got to Arizona. I actually moved in with my girlfriend's sorority sisters. They had a 3 bedroom. And so I just took the last bedroom, which was great. And then I actually met a whole bunch of girls from Washington that lived in the same apartment complex. So I worked 3 jobs and I hustled, but I made some really good friends along the way. And I just really, for the next 5 to 6 years, I just worked in the restaurant industry, and I just try to keep myself out of trouble as much as possible by working as much as I could. And, just also like living my best 21-year-old life ever because I was the one making the rules. So
Yep,
I survived.
totally. Oh my gosh, I was in the restaurant industry too when I went out to San Diego. That's hilarious. Well, and then what, you meet your husband, and how old were you when you met him?
I was 27 when I met my husband. And he actually, when we first met, this is funny. I met him once before, and he was going through a divorce. So he was on his post divorce bender, as he would say. And he had like froey hair and kind of soft and fluffy, if I could be nice and say.
Yeah.
And I was like, my girlfriend's like, oh, you'll love him. He's a nice guy. Da da da. I'm like, not my vibe. And then I ran into him 6 months later, and he'd gotten a haircut and started working out and was like looking pretty good. And so we met that second time, and we were like inseparable. And we've been together for 12 years now. And I feel like I met my like best friend, my partner in crime, the person that can drive me the most nuts. Um,
That's
but you
amazing.
can't live with them and you can't live without them. So I love him to death.
Yeah. That's wonderful. I love that. You guys have a kid together? Your son, I think you said you have a
Yeah.
son?
We have one son. He actually turns 8 today, which I'm just like, where does the time go? But
Such
it's
happy
being a mother has
birthday.
been like the greatest. I know it's so crazy.
That's amazing.
Being a mother's been great, but it's also been honestly a really great way for me to heal my own childhood. Is just doing the things that I had always wished been done for me, I do for him. And so I hope that we're both healing and growing in some beautiful way because he's here with me for a reason.
Totally. That's amazing. Okay, well now I really want to dive into your spiritual intuitive stuff that you do, this positive speaking. Kind of give us a little background on that. I want to hear about what your husband said to you that kind of led to this. You said he said something very profound that stuck with you, and then basically just walk us along that journey if you can.
So I got pregnant, and I thought for maybe the first time in my life, my mom would show up differently for me because it was a grandchild and it was the first grandchild. And so we spoke on the phone a couple times, but it kind of just like petered out pretty fast on her checking in on me. And I was just kind of like sad and disappointed all over again because it was like I was like re-feeling those childhood feelings. And so my husband looked at me one day and he said, you can't hold her to an expectation she never agreed to. And I
Mhm.
was like, I'm making up this story in my head that she's going to be this beautiful grandma and she's going to show up, but she never said she wanted to be that person. And so
Right.
I was just like, that was the beginning of my healing journey, because I had to realize I just had to heal. I had to find peace and forgiveness for myself, um, so that I could be a mom and show up in the way that she did it. And so it really was just the catalyst to this whole spiritual journey that I
Yeah.
started. So got pregnant, had our child, and then I kind of started seeing things, and things were like kind of showing up in weird ways for me. And so the spiritual journey just slowly started, and I can, it's crazy to say, but I can, like, people that have passed away, I get messages. And so I had a girlfriend's father just recently pass away, and so I had a little message for her. I really do think it is a God-given gift in some way, because I am a Christian and I do believe in him, and I have received messages from him when my son was 3. um I was in real estate, and it was just not fulfilling me in the way that I had like hoped it would, and I knew I had such a greater purpose for this like love, and I don't know what else to give. And so my husband said, take 6 months, just, I want you to really think about what you want to do. And so I would take my son to preschool, I'd go work out, and then I'd go sit on the floor of my office. And I just sat there and I journaled and I cried and I prayed and I meditated. And my positive intention prayer cards came to me, and like the image of what they were supposed to look like.
Wow.
So that was 2019. Then COVID hit and I was kind of stuck for quite a while. But during COVID, I was really looking for these like positive prayers to keep my head out of the space we were all trying to not go to. So in
Yeah.
September of 2020, when I had the opportunity, I actually made my prayer cards. Um, and I love them. There's 8 different topics, and they're all like very inspired by people around me, from worthiness and love and change and strength. I have a grief prayer card that I love that I wrote for somebody that had a big loss. And so it's just been this beautiful catalyst of things that have happened. I actually used to work with clients alone on spiritual intuitive guides and just giving messages. I've taken a step back because it's a huge responsibility. And I
Yeah.
really figured out that God's plan for me was for me to have this childhood that wasn't easy, but to be the phoenix that comes out of the fire, and to be able to speak about it and to help other people, and for them to realize that they can find healing, and that they can forgive themselves, and they can forgive the people that hurt them, is my purpose. And
Yeah.
I
And
love talking about it.
yeah, you can tell. And so just for me, like there's so many questions I want to ask, but when you say like, you got pregnant and then you had your child and then you kind of started seeing things and like feeling things, what can you give us like an example of that would be like, like what one or two of the things that kind of stick out in your mind where you were like, wow, like I feel like I am getting a download from like a higher power. Like what does that look like?
Um, so one of the first things that caught my eye when all of this started happening was I woke up in the middle of the night to like a purple being, like a purple form, sitting at the end of my husband's side of the bed. And I was like, oh, it's interesting. It didn't feel threatening. It was just like there. And
Yeah.
then in the morning, I said something to him, and he goes, oh, my grandma used to wear purple tracksuits to every single one of my basketball games. I wonder if it was her.
Oh
And
my
I
God.
was like, I mean, it could only have been her, or a form of her, or the love of her. You know what I mean? But
Yeah.
just sitting at the end of his side of the bed was just like
And it didn't scare you.
crazy. I don't know how you
That's the
know.
thing, right? Like when you say that in my head, I'm like, oh my gosh, like that would terrify me, but you could like feel that it wasn't a scary thing. It was like it was just there. Oh my
All
gosh,
love. Yeah, it was just all
that's
love.
amazing.
Yeah, that was great. That was a big first crazy one. I'm trying to think what else has happened. I mean, really, having been when I sat in that 6 months of meditation in my office, I really realized because I had gone to like psychics and other people to really get answers of like what is my life and what am I supposed to do and all these things. And
Yeah.
they never answered the question. And once I realized that I just sat silently and allowed God to speak through me, he has forever like shown up for me in every moment I've ever needed. I'm gonna cry.
Mm.
Um, but when I sit silently, I feel like I have a greater connection to God than some of my friends that say they're Christians and they're the best Christians out there. I'm like, well, do you sit quietly enough to hear God talk to you? Because he will.
Yeah.
So
That's amazing.
I this summer realized I was carrying on some major generational trauma. And I had been feeling like very itchy and uncomfortable in my own skin. And I finally just had this big thing come to light. And so once I realized it came to light, God was like, put and you feel it inside you. I don't know how else to put it. God put it on my heart that I have to write a book about what I found out because I have to be able to save other people.
I love that.
So, but
Yeah.
yeah, he definitely works through us when it's necessary. And I'm appreciative that I have that ability.
Oh my gosh, of course. Yeah, because it's like, I am a Christian and I pray and I do all those things. And I wouldn't say I necessarily like hear God, like when I'm like, do you hear a voice? Like, is it thoughts in your head? Is it like something just shows up for you and you can see it? But there have been things like, I'll just give one example, but when I separated from my ex-husband, because that was just like the most insane like experience, and I can talk to you about it privately at some point, but it was insane. And I had my daughter, but I had gone through years of infertility treatments, like multiple rounds of IVF, multiple rounds of IUIs, and she was my first healthy normal embryo, and I had 5 more that I was going to implant. And I'm the kind of person where I'm like a calendar person, right? So like when I implanted her and we had her due date, then I put on my calendar a year from her due date, implant baby number 2. And so then like 9 months after that on my calendar, it said baby number 2 is due. And I had that with all of them, right? I did that like with all 6 of them. And but I like wasn't supposed to be able to have kids. Like I had a less than 1% chance of ever having my own kids. This is from the top fertility doctors in Austin, Texas, right? Like years of fertility treatments, surgery on me, all kinds of shit. Okay. Like insanity. And but we got divorced. We separated when my daughter was like 3.5 months old because a lot of stuff came out. And so I was like, she's never going
Right.
to have siblings. Like, I'm never going to have any other babies. Tyler, when we started talking, I told him he didn't have any of his own kids. I told him from the jump, like, I will never get pregnant and I can never go through IVF again. Like, I cannot put myself through that again. And he was just like, okay, like Tyler, he was like, okay. I was like, no, dude, you don't get it. Like, I can never have kids. Like, so if this is a deal breaker, I need you to know this, and,
Right.
but I just kept praying every night, like, if I'm supposed to, right? If I'm supposed to have more children and like Isla is not meant to be an only child, I just prayed every night, like, please, 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 please. Cause I just could not, I was like, gosh, is there a way I can figure out how to do IVF again? It was like I was so in my head and there was just no way. Well, I got pregnant naturally when Isla turned 1. So then I go to put the due date in my calendar, and Tyson's due date was the date that said baby number 2 is due on my calendar. I mean, I get like chills talking about it. And then it happened again.
Mm-hmm.
When Tyson turned 1, I got pregnant again naturally. And I went
The
to put
calendar.
on, I, what?
You
What?
take the other names off the calendar? Did you keep going with the
So I went to put like
I
Jesse is due and it said baby number 3 is due. So Jesse ended up being 10 days late. So he totally messed up the streak. But I was like, oh my gosh, I'm not having any more kids. So like the other ones are taken off because I'm done having kids. But I was just like, it's like God was literally like, I know you wanted this and you were always going to have it. You just weren't going to have it the way that you planned and worked so hard. It just wasn't the right way, right? Like that was not the right way. And
Well, and by the way, it wasn't the right person.
no, yeah, not at all.
You know what I mean? Like God saves us from things that aren't meant for us. And in some way, he totally saved you from all of, you know what I mean? I like,
Yeah. And it's crazy because how you say like your childhood had to be what it was so that you could like you're fulfilling your purpose now. And I say that all the time
mhm.
about like for my childhood and that experience. It's like I needed that experience. I needed it to be what it was because now I am so capable of helping so many people who may be in that situation now, and that really is, I think, what it is. And so I feel like it's just very interesting to hear, your story and how you get these messages, or like you said, you saw the cards. Like that's incredible. And it's from being
Yeah,
quiet.
I've already seen what the cover of my book is supposed to look like. Like he shows me the image of what it's supposed to look like. And now it's my job to put my feet on the ground and start running. So yeah, it's interesting. When he comes to me, it's almost like my body feels very warm and I feel very like heavy and loved. And then I just like a message will come. And so I've ran with every message he's ever given me, and I feel very blessed to be where I am today. So I'll take it.
That's amazing. I love that. Well, can you give our audience a little piece of advice, right? Like if they're stuck somewhere or they, are like how you were in your real estate business, right? And you're like sitting on the floor and trying to figure it out. Like, what is your top one or two tips you can give them? And just like, even if it's maybe for them, who knows if they believe in God or whatever it may be. So just to even follow their own intuition, like what are the top two things you would say?
Well, I think following our intuition is one of the biggest things that we can do for ourselves, because that's really our body telling us, are like, is it a hell yes or is it a hell no? And I
Right.
always tell people that when they ask me questions, they're like, what do you think? And I'm like, well, what does your body tell you? Like, sit down in a quiet place and really ask yourself the question. And what is the overall feeling that you'll get? You'll know if it's a yes or a no. And I think that's such a beautiful place to live. But I also think that, like, when I'm having a bad day, it's so important for us to be easy on ourselves and not talk bad about ourselves. Oh my gosh, you're lazy, you're horrible. Why aren't you getting up? Why aren't you doing this? And I think that some days we just have to like be easy. And if it doesn't all get done, it doesn't all get done. And then the days that we feel amazing and energized, those are the days that we hit it hard and we do all the things. But I think for me, when I learned that when I can just sit down and have that quiet time for myself, I really can work through a lot of things, and receive answers or questions. And, it all really works out. But journaling, I think, is such a beautiful thing too. I journal almost every day, and I journaled a lot as a little kid. So it's funny to look back on my journals. But if I have something running in my head and I just can't get it out, journaling will really help me get that story out of my head, and just releasing it onto that paper is a really big thing. So, I mean, journaling if you are in a tough situation, because it's also a safe place to put your emotions and feelings down that nobody has to know.
Totally.
So journaling is the
Yeah.
most.
I love that. Yay. Well, Jenna, where can these ladies find you? And if they want to reach out to you, what kind of things do you still offer, like the intuitive coaching, or did you kind of step back from that? What are the things they can kind of reach out to you for?
So I'm on Instagram under Jenna Be Spiritual, and I do tips and tricks and funny little stories on my Instagram. And then I have my positive intention prayer cards are on Etsy, and it's also under Jenna Be Spiritual. And my website, if you want to know more about me, is also Jenna Be Spiritual. I got lucky all across the board. It's the same name.
Meant to be.
Yes.
Okay.
Again, yes, totally meant to be.
Yeah. I love that. Well, Jenna, thank you so much. And guys, if you're like driving and you cannot get on Instagram right now or whatever, don't worry. We will put all of this in the show notes so you can totally find her. You can go to her website. You can find these cards and, reach out to her in the DMs if there's questions or anything that you would, like more or like to talk about more. But thank you, Jenna, so much. What a wonderful conversation. And I really appreciate you being here.
By the way, congratulations to you because you've overcome a lot too. So let's not forget that like two-way street over here.
Yes. Thank you so, so much. I know they know like a little bit of my story. It's like I kind of, if I can get some in when it relates to what someone's talking about, I do, but I feel like I need to kind of do my own little series just about like crazy stuff.
Yeah, totally. But thank you for having me. It was such a pleasure.
Of course, girl. Thank you.